Hello. So today I'm going to be talking about creating a menu with Python code in your HDA that will auto-populate based on your given data table that you made in Unreal. Here I have the floors data table, and I'm going to be reading this floor name right here. And I'm going to be giving it to my building tool here in this pattern menu based on one of these, and it's going to automatically create my building because it's my building tool, of course. But the main thing is this list auto-populates. If I add more things to this data table, right now I have 7 rows. If I add an 8th row, an 8th thing will appear here, as long as it has the floor name. It has to have a floor name, because that's what I'm basing this on. Okay. Now this is strongly based and built on the Project Titan building tool. There's a tutorial that's very, very good posted by Houdini's YouTube channel. It's like 8 videos, and like half of those are just on the ceiling or on the roof. So this is actually covering pretty much the first 4 videos probably of the building tool, and that's completely step-by-step followable if you want to copy that tutorial. It shows you how to use data tables in the first place with Unreal, and linking them, of course, to Houdini. I strongly recommend watching that, but this tool, this strategy of creating a menu based on a data table, it's not limited to this building tool. You can use it for a lot of things. I could already think of making a tool that maybe uses a curve. And this is a basic example, but if I had a tool that created a curve, and based on that curve it copied or it instanced meshes to that curve, right? Well, if I want to change the mesh that's instancing to that curve, maybe I could make a data table that has all my meshes in it, and then I could link that data table to my tool, create a menu out of it so that I have my different meshes appear in this menu, and then I can just choose which mesh I want to be instanced on the curve by just selecting it from the menu. The main thing is it creates an easy to use tool. The thing I didn't super enjoy about the Project Titan building tool was that you had to type these patterns in, and because my computer isn't the strongest, if I mistyped the patterns, there was a chance it would freeze my Unreal because Houdini couldn't process what I was trying to tell it to do. So by creating this menu, kind of eliminated that error that I could make, and allowed me to also practice my Python in Houdini, and that's what we're going to be talking about now. On top of that, I wanted to say, please watch that tutorial. It is a very, very useful tutorial if you ever want to use data tables and link them to your Unreal. They will also be using session sync. You can see I have a session sync open right now, which I had never used before watching that tutorial, and it's actually incredibly useful because if I go here to Houdini, go to my building tool, you can see this is pretty much the same thing, but I have, let me make this editable, but I have this object merge, and if I go to this geometry spreadsheet, you can see this is the exact same as that data table. It's just a point for each row. So each row got a point, and it has the same data that I had there, and I'm able to see this very easily because I'm using session sync. So if you want to learn about session sync, data tables, linking them to Houdini, I strongly recommend watching that tutorial, but nevertheless, I'm going to talk pretty quickly through this, but we're going to talk about the Python code, what can be added to the Python code to make this better, and yeah, so here we go. So the main thing is, all of this, if you follow that tutorial, you will have. In fact, you'll have all of this if you follow that tutorial. But this is the main stuff right here. So this is the meshes, and this is the floors. Okay, remember I said the floors are what we're focusing on here. So I created this null afterward, and you can see we suddenly have more points, and that's because we have this grid. So this is fine, but I don't want my menu to have, for example, style 1 in there 4 times. So we're gonna take care of that in our Python code. And you can come here to this building from patterns. This is the main thing driving the whole building tool. But we have this pattern, right? And it says generic. That is why my Unreal is the empty instanced mesh right here, the question mark box. It's because this is generic, and in Unreal that means blank. Okay. But you can see here this is linked to the parameter pattern 1. Okay. So pattern, these triangles, I should say this real quick, these triangles mean repeat. Okay, so it's repeating the floor generic, which in our case is nothing because Unreal doesn't read generic. Okay, we want this to repeat style 1. So inside these triangles, we pretty much want to say style 1, or really anything that we select from our menu. And that is going to be selected based on this floor name. So each menu item is going to be a floor name menu item. So we're going to have the floor name of like style test 2, 1, 2, 3, and the ledges and whatnot, of course. Those are all going to be linked to the menu automatically. If I add a new style, it'll be added to the menu as long as it has a row inside of our data table in Unreal. Okay? I hope this is all making sense. If you watch the tutorial, it'll make more sense. So what I did here, let me go to my scene view, is if I go to my building tool here and I go to type properties, let me go back in here too. So I dragged this building styles group pattern, all this has been dragged into here. So that is these, and actually this all will come automatically if you just drag add building styles in here. It'll create the folder, the group, the pattern, separator, all this stuff will come automatically. This will happen if you do that tutorial, like I said. But the main thing we're focusing on is pattern, right? Because I want the pattern to pretty much say one of these floor types inside of these triangles, right? So what I did was I went here to menu, and I said use menu, and I just have it on the default single selection menu only. By default it'll look like this, say token label. Token is the actual value that will be used, and label is the display value that will be used. So if I go to my Unreal, you'll see we have style test. If these are the label values, so if I could make these say anything I wanted them to say, but I just made them say the same name as the style. But let's say you had a brick style, but the actual value was like style 1. You could make it say brick instead if you wanted it to say something like that. But that's what this token label is, and we use these inside of our menu script. So if you click on menu script, this is where you can do Python. And if it doesn't let you do Python, you need to scroll down here and choose menu script language Python. I think by default it's on Python nowadays, but some of the older versions apparently are on H script. So just make sure that's on Python. Alright, so here we have geo, which is a variable I'm creating. Make this a little bit smaller. It's a variable I'm creating based on the floors node, okay? So we have floors, so this node is being read, and that's what's being assigned to this variable geo. I'm then creating an array called floor patterns, and I have these two symbols, triangle 1, triangle 2. The reason I did this is because I was having a little bit of glitchiness if I didn't make these variables. Yeah, I just did it like this. So we're going to loop through each point in geo, right? So if I go to geo, which is floors, and I go to attributes, we're looping through each point, which is 27 points. But like I said, we don't want 4 style 1s in our menu, okay? But what we're saying is pattern is equal to point attribute value floor name. Okay, so we're creating a variable called pattern for each point that we're looping through, and we're setting it to the value of floor name. Floor name here is the different styles. And remember, I just said we don't want 4 style 1s, 4 style 2s, 4 style 3s. So what we do is we say if the pattern that we're looking at doesn't already exist in our array, then add it to our array. Okay. This first append is, if I go to menu items, the token value. The second append is the label value. So this is the display value. This is the token value. Okay, the token value has T1 plus and the pattern, then pattern plus T2. This is so it's enclosed in those triangles, meaning repeat. You will learn about that in that other tutorial if you're interested. And then we're returning the floor patterns. Okay, and then the value that we're returning, except, is linked to this parameter. So this will show a new menu item for each one. Okay, so now if I go into Unreal, and I'm going to stop the session sync, and I think that stops, yeah, it stops my session, so I need to restart my session. Session connected. So you can see here we have pattern. I don't know why that's there. Actually, I'm going to rebuild this really fast just to get everything back to normal. So we rebuild it, and you'll see this pattern is blank, right? We have our mesh, or our data tables are already in here. Our reference geometry is a cube that I'm hiding. And if I go up here, I now have those different names linked to this menu. So the one style that I did a little bit of effort on was style 1, which has these arches. So if I choose style 1, boom, there it is. If I choose style test, this is just a colored test. And then style test 2 is just inverted. And these are different meshes that I have here. If I go to building, I have these different meshes, right? So bottom arch V1 is what's being used in style 1, and then test wall and test wall 2 are what are being used in the test versions. Everything about this building tool, I would really watch that tutorial. I know I've said it a million times, but strongly recommended. The other thing I would say is this is very usable in other situations. You don't have to just make buildings all the time. The main thing with that script is looping through the points on a node. Those points on that node will be referenced to your data table, right? 1 point per row. And for each of those, they will have attributes that come from the columns in your data table in Unreal. So I had the name, and that's what I'm using here is the name for my pattern. But another way you could use it is, you know, meshes can be in a data table. It doesn't have to be names. It doesn't have to be, you know, used in this exact way. You can create a data table of meshes. Maybe you make a data table of trees, and you use that data table everywhere. And you have a tool. Maybe you have a some type of scatter tool, and you have a bunch of different levels. And on this level, you only want to use, you know, tree 2. Well, all you have to do is drag that HDA in and choose tree 2. The main thing for this is ease of access. That's the main reason I made it. There is to be built upon, because right now I'm restricted to the one style. I don't have floor overrides. I'm going to try to work on that next. But I thought it was interesting to share how easily you can do a little Python code. What was that, like maybe 10 lines of code? And you can have a dynamic menu that auto-populates based on your data table. And then you can link that given menu parameter to different things and use it in different ways. Maybe I have a data table of sizes, and I create a menu that says what size do you want, and you choose your size, and it has that parameter linked to the size attribute of a mesh. So I have like the X size is linked to the menu item that I choose, and I have a bunch of different options here. Now that's not the most practical use, but it's just an example. So yeah, Python in Houdini, I'm kind of new to it. I know Python, but I haven't used it a ton in Houdini. But I just found out how simple you can do Python code in HDA menus, and I strongly recommend trying it out because you can make tools easier to use for artists, and that's the main thing, right? You want artists to easily be able to do stuff. So the faster the better. And this is a lot faster than me having to type different styles in. If I mistype, I crash my Unreal. So anyways, thanks for watching, giving me the time. Yeah, peace.